I am Vexi Larthon, third speaker of the Kale Compact. I am writing this account because someone needs to remember what happened, and why my people are still alive to tell it. My home is a quiet system. We are traders, not fighters. For 400 years we solved every problem with words, contracts, and patience. We joined the Concord of 700 Worlds because we believed that being part of something large would keep us safe. We believed that if trouble ever came, someone would help us. We were wrong. The trouble came from the Kesh Rift, a dark region at the edge of our charts that few ships ever entered. The Grelnak Armada came out of it without warning. 300 warships, moving in perfect formation, aimed straight at our home system. We had no real navy. We had cargo ships, mining vessels, and a handful of patrol craft meant for stopping smugglers, not stopping an invasion. I sent our distress beacon myself. I typed the message with my own hands, because I did not trust anyone else to get the words right. I sent it to the Concord Assembly, the same body we had trusted for centuries. I watched the signal leave our system and disappear into the dark, carrying everything we had left to say. The first day, nothing happened. The second day, nothing happened. By the fifth day, the Grelnak had already taken our outer colonies. I still remember the reports coming in, one after another, each one quieter than the last, because there were fewer voices left to send them. On the seventh day, the Concord finally responded, not with ships, with a message. 3 different representatives explained in careful and polite language why sending help was premature, or outside mandate, or might be seen as provoking further conflict. They spoke as if we had all the time in the world. We did not. I remember standing on the observation deck of our last shipyard, looking out at the dark where our colonies used to shine, and feeling something I had never felt before. Not fear exactly. Something quieter and colder than fear. It was the feeling of being forgotten by the very people who had promised to remember you. On the 12th day, that shipyard fell silent too. I had one signal left to try. It was not a Concord channel. It was an old contact string filed away by my predecessor decades earlier, under a heading that had always seemed like a joke to me. Emergency contact, Sol system. Use only if all else has failed. All else had failed, so I used it. My aide, Tessic, laughed when he saw what I had done. He was not laughing because he found it funny. He was laughing because he was frightened, and sometimes frightened people laugh instead of cry. They are a Deathworld species, he said. Their homeworld tried to kill them for millions of years before they built their first city. They still eat food that most species would call spoiled, just for the taste. They practice fighting for entertainment. You want beings like that coming here? I want anyone coming here, I told him. An inconvenient ally is better than a certain ending. I did not expect an answer. I expected silence, the same silence the Concord had given us. 4 hours later, a reply arrived. 4 hours. The Concord took weeks to approve even a single meeting about our situation. This reply came faster than some of our own internal messages. It was short. It had no formal titles, no committee approval, no long explanation of policy. It simply said, on our way, hold the line. It was signed by a single name, Fleet Admiral R. Osei, of something called the United Earth Systems Coalition Defense Force. I read it 3 times. I did not understand what I was feeling. Hope is a strange thing when you have almost stopped expecting it. 11 hours later, they arrived. Our sensors detected 41 ships dropping out of slip space at a distance our engineers insisted should not have been possible to cross that quickly. 41 ships, against an armada of 300. My first thought was that we had traded a slow ending for a fast one. I thought perhaps this small fleet did not understand what it was walking into. Then I saw their ships more closely, and I understood something else instead. Grelnak ships were built for distance and patience, the way our own culture valued distance and patience in every negotiation. Long, elegant hulls, built to strike from far away and wear down an enemy slowly, the way water wears down stone. Human ships were nothing like that. They were shorter, heavier, covered in thick plating, built to get close and stay close. I later learned that human naval thinking followed one simple idea passed down for generations. If you are close enough to be struck, you are close enough to strike back harder. The Grelnak commander broadcast a warning to the new arrivals, speaking of established territory and the foolishness of interfering in matters that did not concern them. I expected a long reply, full of careful diplomatic language, the kind my own people would have sent. Instead, the human fleet sent one short message, repeated across all 41 ships at the exact same moment. It took our translators 9 seconds to render it properly. I have never heard anything so simple land so heavily across a command deck. It said, "You are standing on someone's home. Move, or we will move you." I had read about Deathworld species before, in old reports and academic papers. I had always treated it as an interesting fact and nothing more, a note about a species whose homeworld gravity, weather, and wildlife had spent millions of years trying to end them before they built their first city. I understood the meaning of those words differently within the first minutes of what followed. The Grelnak fought the way a disciplined and patient force fights, holding formation, striking from range, trading blows carefully, expecting the numbers to eventually favor them. The human fleet did not fight like a force that expected to win through greater numbers, because they did not have greater numbers. They fought like something that had never once, in its whole history, been given the comfort of assuming victory. Every move they made assumed the worst outcome and continued anyway. Their ships took damage that should have ended them and kept moving. Their smaller craft pushed into dangerous positions that any careful tactician would have called reckless, and came back having gained ground that seemed impossible to gain. I asked Admiral Osei about this afterward, speaking through a translator over a comm channel, because I did not yet have the courage to meet a human in person. I asked how they trained their people to fight with such determination against such difficult odds. She sounded almost puzzled by my question. "We did not train them to fight like that," she said. "We trained them to be safe. What you saw today is simply what is left in people once you remove the fear from beings who grew up needing that same fear just to survive their mornings." I did not fully understand what she meant at the time. I understand it better now. By the 4th hour, the Grelnak Armada broke formation and left our system entirely. They had lost far more ships than the small human fleet that had come to stop them. I was told later, by human officers who seemed almost embarrassed to say it, that this had been considered a quiet and unremarkable battle by their own standards, nothing close to the difficult fights they were used to. I stood on the deck of Admiral Osei's flagship 2 days later. It felt strange to walk among a species I had spent my entire career treating as unlikely to ever matter to my people's interests. Their ship was simple, practical, and full of small signs of a culture I did not yet understand. Images of homeworlds and families placed near workstations. Small personal items kept close even in a place built for war. I asked her the question that had been sitting in my chest since our beacon first went unanswered. "We are not your allies. We have no treaty with your people. You had nothing to gain from helping us. Why did you come?" She looked at me the way someone looks at a question whose answer the asker already half knows. "You sent a distress call," she said. "Someone was supposed to come. No one did, so we did." "That is not a reason," I said. "That is not policy. Policies require benefit. Alliances require history. We had neither with you." "No," she agreed. "It is not policy. We do not really have a policy for this part. We simply do not like hearing someone calling for help into an empty room, with no one answering. We never have. I do not think we ever will." I did not have a reply for her. I still do not have one, even now, weeks later, as I write this record for an assembly that will ask me why I chose to spend compact resources building relations with an unrecognized, non-member species that they describe, in their reports, as unusually intense and difficult to categorize. In the days that followed, I learned more about the humans who had come to help us. I learned that their fleet had been sent from a small outpost only a few systems away, not from their homeworld itself, and that Admiral Osei had made the decision to come before receiving any formal approval from her own government. I asked her if this had caused trouble for her afterward. She smiled, in the small and careful way I was learning humans smiled when something amused them but was also slightly serious. "A little trouble," she admitted, "but less trouble than living with the choice to do nothing." I found this strange at first. Among my people, decisions of this size always came through long discussion, through careful weighing of outcomes, through committees built specifically to prevent any single person from acting alone. The idea that one commander could simply decide to cross the space between systems and risk her people for beings she had never met felt almost impossible to me. But as the days passed, and I spoke with more of her crew, I began to understand it differently. It was not that humans acted without thought, it was that they seemed to carry a different kind of thought, one built less around avoiding all risk, and more around accepting that some risks were worth taking, if the alternative was watching someone else suffer without acting. One young officer, barely more than a child by the counting of her own species, told me about her homeworld's history, how it was filled with long periods of hardship, natural disaster, and struggle, long before humans had ever built ships capable of leaving their planet. She said her people had learned, over many generations, that waiting for someone else to solve a problem often meant the problem was never solved at all. So instead, they built a habit of stepping forward first, even when they were not certain of the outcome. I asked her if she was ever afraid during the battle. She said yes, of course she was afraid. Everyone on her ship had been afraid. But she said fear was not something that stopped her people from acting. It was simply something they carried alongside the action itself. This was very different from how my own people were raised. We were taught that fear was a signal to slow down, to gather more information, to wait until every risk had been carefully measured. There is wisdom in that approach, and it has kept my people safe for many generations. But standing in that shipyard, watching my home nearly fall silent forever, while careful discussions continued far away, I began to wonder if there were some situations where waiting itself became the greater risk. In the following weeks, representatives from my compact met formally with Admiral Osei and her government. I attended every meeting myself, determined to understand these beings who had crossed so much distance for people who owed them nothing. I learned that their history was filled with difficult chapters, times of conflict among themselves that they were not proud of, and lessons learned slowly and sometimes painfully. But I also learned that from those difficult chapters had come something unexpected, a strong instinct to protect those who could not protect themselves, and a discomfort with silence in the face of suffering that seemed to run deeper than any single policy or law. I began drafting a proposal to the Compact Council, suggesting we open formal relations with this small but capable fleet and the larger civilization behind it. I knew this would be met with resistance. The Concord had already labeled the humans as unpredictable, difficult to categorize, and outside the accepted structures of interstellar diplomacy. Some members of my own council would ask why we should align ourselves with a species so different from our careful and measured ways. I decided I would answer that question honestly, the same way Admiral Osei had answered mine. When the beacon went out and no one came, it was not policy that answered. It was not treaty obligation, or careful calculation of benefit, or membership in some grand structure built over centuries. It was a small fleet from a system barely known to us, arriving because they could not stand the sound of someone calling for help and receiving nothing in return. I do not know what the Council will decide. I do not know if the wider galaxy will ever fully understand or accept a species built so differently from most of the civilizations among the stars, but I know what I saw with my own eyes. I saw 41 ships stand against 300, not because the numbers favored them, but because somewhere, someone had decided that standing still was worse than standing outnumbered. Before Admiral Osei's fleet departed our system to return to their outpost, she gave me a small token, a simple metal disc with an image of her homeworld engraved on one side. She said it was a tradition among her people, something given between those who had faced hardship together and come through it. I keep it with me now as I write this record, a small reminder of a lesson I did not expect to learn so late in my long career. The galaxy heard us calling for help and decided it was inconvenient to answer. A small group of strangers heard the same call and decided that answering it was the whole point of being able to answer at all. I do not know everything about the humans yet. I am still learning. But I know which lesson I intend to carry forward, and I know which kind of ally I hope my people will choose to stand beside in the difficult years still ahead of us. This is my record, written honestly and without exaggeration, for anyone who reads it after me. Let it be known that when my home called out into the dark, someone answered. Let it also be known who that someone was, and let my people never forget it.